Hello, it's Sarah, and this is Hardcover Hearts. I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up, where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. Had a really great reading week, so let's just jump right in. The first thing that I finished was a NetGalley digital arc that I was granted, and this is for Secrets of Happiness by Joan Silber. I read her previous book, Improvements, and thought it was very interesting. I thought it was complex, had some well-crafted, had some things to say, but this was more readable and more straightforward, despite the fact that it's interconnected short stories. Each chapter has we move to a different character, and some of the characters interweave, some come back. So it's an interesting interplay in all of these different stories of people who are kind of set in America, but have global reach and global expanse for a myriad of different reasons. The reason I was interested in this book was because of the initial story that I heard about, which was an adult man finds out that his father, who was a traveling salesman who traveled to Asia, actually admitted to having an entire other family. And that gentleman who found out that information about his father, his name was Ethan, and Ethan is a lawyer. And so, the implications, not just legally, morally, ethically, as well as just the betrayal that you feel as an adult thinking about your parent, seemed like a really interesting place to start, and it was. Many characters, these characters are all richly drawn, interesting, and many of them, it's about how they choose to deal with the situations that are happening in their lives, and how they choose happiness, or how they choose to try to find happiness. I was particularly interested in Ethan's mother's story. So here's a woman who just found out that her entire marriage was a sham, or that it was half of what she thought it was. And how does she choose to deal with that? And I found her decisions to be quite interesting, and I really liked that. I really liked seeing her change and become something different. We also meet the other family. We meet his half-brother. His half-brother's name is Joe, and we hear his story, as well as his brother. His brother was starting to get into trouble and was sent back to Bangkok. And what happens there? Something happens there, and he has to go back to Bangkok and help his brother. So immediately, after kind of starting in the United States, New Jersey, I think, all of a sudden it goes global. I just think it was really great about relationships, and it was so well crafted. You just felt like you were in the hands of a good writer who was telling interesting stories in an interesting way. But overall, I didn't love it, but I did really like it, and I think it was well done. So there you go with that one. I was raving about this next one last week, and it just didn't hold for me. After last week, when I continued with it, I became very disappointed. This is Mieko Kawakami's Breast and Eggs. Interestingly enough, it has two male writers who did the translation, and their names are Sam Bett and David Boyd. The reason I say that's interesting is because this is a book that's so much about the physicality of being a woman, and the implications of what when our bodies change, how that means that we have to change, and how we try to control that process, and the implications that happen with that. So we have three main characters that we follow. We follow Natsu, who is our main character. She's a 30-year-old writer. we see kind of her life, and she's kind of like the main person. And then we have two other characters who I enjoyed the interaction between the trio. Makiko, who is her sister. Her sister has had kind of a hard life and works in a bar, is obsessed with getting breast implants, like obsessed. And we have her younger daughter, Midoriko, and Midoriko is really disgusted and revolted by her mother's obsession with her body and her appearance, and at the same time feels kind of let down at a time when she really needs her to be a strong role model, because she's about to start menstruation and she's really having challenges trying to figure out what does that mean and deal with all of the emotions and everything. So much so that she stops speaking with her mother. She's so angry and has so much rage and disgust and deep disappointment in what she sees to be as completely superficial and an insane quest to cut up your body to stuff it in order to look more sexually attractive. And she just cannot speak to her mother. She just refuses. They come to see Natsu and spend time with her. And it's while they're there in Tokyo that everything gets really interesting. And that's where I left it last week. Unfortunately, right after that, they leave. And for me, the story just wasn't as interesting because we didn't have that dynamic. And instead, we follow Natsu as she's dealing with wanting to have a child, but not wanting to ever have sex again, ever have intercourse again. And what are the implications of her raising a child on her own? Both physically, how would she physically do it? How will she choose a sperm donor? What are the societal implications, cultural implications for her to be an unmarried woman having a child, and also for the child growing up? She meets a man who found out that he was conceived from a sperm donor and has a lot of rage and a lot of confusion and a lot of sadness because of this. And so it just starts her quest to find someone to have a baby with, but not be in a relationship with. Now, I'm interested in that concept per se, but I'm not, motherhood is not not as interesting a subject for me, or the desire to be a mother and all that entails. So for me, that part really dragged. I'm sure for other people that might be a really interesting portion. It was only subtly interesting for me, but overall, it really brought down the book like kind of like an anchor. So wasn't a hit for me, but that first section was fantastic. So the next book blew my mind. I mentioned that I received a copy of it from my library, and I did it in audio form. And the audio form is actually narrated by the author themselves, which is fantastic because it really gives you a flavor for their story. The book I'm talking about is Akwaeke Emezi's Dear Senthuran, a Black Spirit memoir. Akwaeke Emezi is trans and goes by they. And this book completely captivated me. I'm always interested in stories of people who chart their own course and chart their own path, and through challenges or a clear-eyed purposefulness in their life, they're able to create something that didn't exist before. So I'm really drawn to artists, innovators, these types of people. And Akwaeke is absolutely one of them. The other thing that is so interesting about Akwaeke is that they feel that they are spirit embodied in the body that they were born in, but they are of God, and they are God-like. And it creates this amazing tension in the narrative as they're dealing with things like disappointment, heartache, betrayal, found family, separating from their family that doesn't understand their vision, who they are, their calling, and really trying to slough through and release what isn't serving them to come up with something that is more authentic and real for them in their lives as a storyteller. And they say that that is their primary reason to be here. There's a feeling of mysticism here, of determinedness, a lot of earned lessons, a lot of pain, a lot of rawness. And so on one hand, there's this feeling that they get themselves, and they know, and they're driven and ambitious and clear-minded on where they're going. And then you also see how easily they're taken off course, and how easily they're disappointed by found family, how they feel that they found people who see them, and then how quickly that's used against them. And yes, it's a human story, right? We've all experienced disappointment and heartbreak and all of that. But the tenderness with which Akwaeke shares their story, and at the same time, it feels like we're seeing a cathartic evolution of spirit. It felt like a manifesto. It felt like this is, I've already have been interested in this author, have already been interested in their story. I'm going to continue to be so. And I'm just incredibly impressed at the amount of work that they have delivered and continue to work on. The output is tremendous. The writing, I think, was exquisite. And yeah, I was entranced by it, completely entranced by it. I do have to say there's a lot about body modification. So when I say that they sloughed off, they have literally changed their body in specific ways, and they talk very openly about that. And there's also they talk about times in their lives when they have attempted suicide in very graphic ways. So be aware of that. But wow, just wow. Okay, on a completely different note, I finished this is my buddy read with Bert from Past Storytime, and it was an absolute delight. This was Elizabeth Bowen's The Death of the Heart, with this gorgeous, gorgeous cover. I'm so glad that I finally found Elizabeth Bowen, because wow, her writing is exemplary. This book was so atmospheric, so layered, and so full of details and characters and deep character study about this one young woman. She's orphaned and is taken in by her half-brother and his wife. Her half-brother, her name is Portia, her half-brother is Thomas, and his wife, Anna. Thomas and Anna are in this marriage that just is boring, lifeless. They just seem like they're two people going through the motions, living this upper middle class life, and bored, silly, languorous. They feel like they embody something of this post-war World War II period where life doesn't really have a lot of meaning. And there's definitely no joy in the house that she moves into. She's kind of a fish out of water. She's only heard about this other family, but never met them before moving in. She is the product of an affair. The father was sent packing and was given a divorce and married her mother. And they were living in exile on the continent in hotels. So she had this kind of nomadic existence, didn't really feel rooted. Whereas Thomas, the exact opposite. He was pretty much already in college when the affair happened, and he found out about it. And but he still lives among the things from his family, and even though his mother is no longer with them, he's kind of rooted and stayed in this home with this woman, Matchett, who is kind of the housekeeper or the main person who watches over the home. And then, of course, his wife, Anna. Portia falls for the charms of a rogue. And this rogue is someone that knows Anna and that has kind of wormed himself into the family, but he's kind of a troublemaker. I'd say Lothario, he definitely wants to get as much as he can, but doesn't really think about the consequences. He's kind of a troll. He kind of does whatever he wants to do and says whatever he wants to say, and doesn't really have a means of making money on his own, except for a job that Thomas gives him at his company at the behest of Anna. He and Anna are in this antagonistic relationship. This guy's name's Eddie. And he decides that he's going to turn his attentions on the young Portia as a way to get back at Anna. Well, Portia is innocent, and it's the first person who's paying attention to her because Thomas and Anna definitely don't. What's key to the story is a diary. She keeps a diary. She's an observer. She sees things. She doesn't judge, but she definitely writes everything down. And as we open the book, Anna has found the diary and has taken supreme offense to it. And then we kind of move on from there. It's an amazing character study. There's so much symbolism and motifs and themes that are just kind of written through here. You can spend time exploring all of that. But if you're not interested in that, the story in itself is fantastic and the characters are remarkable. The setting is fantastic. You get a vibe. The setting is almost another character within the book itself. Her writing was exquisite. Bert and I just had so much to talk about. I mean, look at all of the tabs of just things that just struck me as really insightful. She's a very psychologically insightful writer. And the end, Bert was very right to say it felt almost modern, like a modernist ending, which left us both really pleased and also with a lot of questions. So this was a fantastic introduction to Elizabeth Bowen and also a great buddy read with Bert. Thank you so much for reading with me, Bert. Yay. So that's what I finished. Let's talk about what I'm currently reading. Still with the Proust, Volume 3, The Guermantes Way of In Search of Lost Time. I need to pick up the pace here for sure. Then I'm also trying to get through Smoke and Ashes. This is number 3 of the Sam Wyndham series, Captain Sam Wyndham. This is by Abir Mukherjee. I'm going to try to make this so it's not so bright. This is my library copy. And I've fallen in love with this series. I can't stop reading it. It's set in colonial India, and we have Sam, who's a captain who's Scottish, who was brought over. He is an opium addict, and he is dealing with, in this case, in this story specifically, the repercussions of some of the conflict for independence that are being stirred up by Mahatma Gandhi. And what the nonviolent, the politics behind and the decisions behind the nonviolent disruption, and what is that really doing? The bluff is being called because the prince is about to arrive. And so, of course, the police are trying to keep order. So it's a game of chicken to see where's the powder keg going to blow and how can they maintain as much order as possible without creating martyrs and without stoking the flames further. Just magnificent so far. I also am still making progress with The Women I Think About at Night, Traveling the Path of My Heroes by Mia Kankimäki. I've finished the Explorers section and I'm about to move into the Artists section, which I'm really excited about. Some of this is getting a little, she's including herself a little too much. I'm still enjoying it, but it's not as amazing as that first section that I read, the Karen Blixen section. I'm looking forward to maybe ending on a high note with all of the artists. So we'll see, but still enjoying it. And then lastly, I have an audiobook that I'm doing. This is called An Expert in Murder by Nicola Upson. Interestingly enough, so last week I finished the Josephine Tay book that I talked about, Miss Pym Dispossesses. And this actually has Josephine Tay, the same author, as the main character, the protagonist. And I'm learning a little bit about her as she's forming this as this character in this book. So Josephine Tay had a history as a playwright as well. So she wrote detective novels, and then she was also a playwright. And this focuses on a mystery around the closing of one of her plays. Still not sure how I feel about Josephine Tay as the main character in a story, a mystery detective story. It seems a little strange and interesting, maybe a little too close to home. I don't know. But so far I'm enjoying it. We'll see. You'll have to come back next week and see what I thought of it. And when it comes to reading for next week, I'm not really sure, except for one. I'm definitely going to be picking up the next in my Virginia Woolf series that I'm doing with Elizabeth of Bookish North. So we'll be doing that. And Leo and I were so irritated with Anita Bruckner last time that we need a little bit more time before we start the next one, but we'll be reading them more quickly. So yeah, we'll see wherever my mood takes me next week. But so far I've got some good things on deck, I think. So I hope your reading has been great this week, and let me know what your thoughts are about any of the books that I talked about today. I think that's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching. And again, we are still in a global pandemic. Maintain safe social distance. Wear a mask if you are around unvaccinated people or in close quarters as needed, and wash your hands and don't touch your face. That's it for me. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.